Every day you take advantage of city services. From driving on city streets to neighborhood livability. But it's not just about providing high-quality service. It's about providing those services in an efficient and cost-effective way. For example, you want a bus when and where you need it. But it would be really wasteful if you're the only person on that bus. That balance between high-quality services and efficient use of resources isn't as easy as you might think. Planning, development, and transportation, like the rest of the city, takes that challenge very seriously.
Data is given a cost-benefit analysis to decide what's the most appropriate treatment, what's the most appropriate time.
We track costs and keep a close eye on the industry.
It's a good tool for adjustments.
We're collecting information, and we use that information then to make informed decisions.
Presenting that information to policymakers and getting their feedback.
If you're not measuring it, you're not managing it.
We set goals or performance measures, and then we collect data to help us reach those goals. And that data, well, that shows up in places you might not even expect, like planning. "15 years ago, the city started City Plan. And that's essentially a document that sets some guidelines about how we're going to accomplish our vision for the future. We update this document every 5 years, and the most recent effort to update that is called Plan Fort Collins, which will help update both the Transportation Master Plan and City Plan.
City Plan is the community's comprehensive plan. It's critical that the city, in preparing that document, get as much of a broad-based input from the community as we can. Ultimately, the document will be adopted by the City Council. So it is really their plan, but obviously they are elected officials and they are representatives of the electorate in the community, so they represent the community.
All that public input on what kind of community Fort Collins should be gets compiled by staff and presented to council, who, with more input, create the city's values and vision. The values and vision of the city become the foundation for City Plan. To that, we add census data. Who lives here? Employment data, physical attributes. What industries are we trying to attract and grow? Current and projected water and energy use. Where is growth going to happen? What are the transportation trends? Where do people live, work, and play? All that data goes into City Plan and is used for the Transportation Master Plan as well.
We can't do the transportation planning and analysis without understanding the land use plans and how those work together. We also have to take into account our energy needs and our water and wastewater planning and all of the other services that go into developing and operating a city-wide system.
And the subjective data, I think, is equally important, and that really has to do with people's opinions, their perspectives, their viewpoints, their ideas. And it's not always to say everything by the numbers, because part of the qualitative data is important to shape the quality of the community itself.
That's why we have sub-area plans. They start with City Plan and add the values of that specific area, what's there now and what's coming, the physical features of the area, and what that area needs. A park, bike lanes, a grocery store.
That process of developing that plan takes a lot of public input. What are the needs, transportation, land use, compatibility. And then once that's set, the land use pattern is set, then it's complemented by the zoning, which is actually the implementation tool.
Regulations in the land use code all find a policy basis either back in City Plan or a sub-area plan dealing with that specific area.
So the sub-area plan becomes the basis for any development in that area. But any major project also has to have public input and meet the land use code, the building code, and go through a development review process.
So then an application comes forward, and it could vary from an individual homeowner wanting to expand their home or all the way up to a large development application with hundreds of homes, commercial, and those sorts of uses. So regardless of whether it's the small project or the large project, it needs to tie and fit into that overall plan that was created.
The city's engineering department designs and manages major city projects, like new roads or redesign of intersections. And here's where that balance comes in again. You want it to be good, but you want it to get done as fast and cost effectively as possible.
One thing we do is look at costs from other projects, because the trick is estimating the project appropriately. Make sure that we control the schedule and the budget and make sure we meet our promises.
And then we have to maintain those roads. In this economy, that can be tricky.
Just like maintaining your house, that you want to do a repair early in the pavement's life so that you're getting the maximum benefit from that treatment. The longer you wait, the more expensive it is to do a repair at that point.
The look and feel of a neighborhood is more than just when it was built. It's an ongoing effort. And that means things like getting to know your neighbor and even code enforcement.
We have 4 code compliance officers. They each have a certain area of town.
If there's a complaint about trash or weeds, the first step is to ask the homeowner and the tenants to take care of it. If they don't, we hire a contractor to deal with it and then bill the homeowner.
We sent the property owner and the tenants a letter letting them know that they needed to get rid of the bags of leaves that were on the side of the property, and we're now past the due date. So
our inspector would go back out, and if it wasn't corrected, they would attach a bright red for real notice, I call it, meaning, okay, you got your letter, maybe you accidentally threw it away, but for real, now we need you to correct this.
there, they can't miss that. And then I'll come back in a couple of days and hopefully they'll have taken care of it.
And it's been very successful, and we've cut our abatements down dramatically, which then in turn saves us money.
Code enforcement is important to keeping quality neighborhoods, but there's also some major policies that help keep our neighborhoods what they are today. For example, the U+2 or 3 unrelated ordinance.
We implemented the program, we're living with it for a little while, we're then collecting some more data and analyzing that and looking at it to see what adjustments.
Statistically valid, random surveys through the community so that we're sure that we are hearing from everyone.
What we try to do, and I think Fort Collins does a great job, is get a lot of public involvement in processes. Whenever we change a process or an ordinance or a standard, it's good to get that input so you understand what that information change is going to do and what that's going to look like.
Pare it down so that it's not 75 pages, but is maybe 1 page. And then really we share that discussion with council, and then council can base their policy decisions with as much information as possible.
Because we know that little remains static, and so it's really important to, you don't do things once and then it remains in place forever.
Have you noticed it's a lot easier to get around town lately? I mean, for example, I live on the north side of town, and my parents, they live on the south side by Harmony and LeMay. And what used to take about 20 minutes, now takes me more like 10 or 15. It's not by accident, I have to tell you. We have traffic engineers working so that it takes you less than 3 minutes to drive 1 mile on our main streets, like Harmony, College, and those type of things.
I'm kind of the lab rat that goes out and does the real-time data collection that they use to make these changes. And some of them are pretty good changes that they can make. Other streets, you know, a little more difficult depending on the number of signals.
We take the data from the turning movement counts, we take the geometric data of what the road looks like, and we take the signal timing data and we input it into this program. And it'll actually simulate the conditions out in the field, which is a very powerful tool for us to really evaluate how well traffic flows and what changes in the signal timing and the geometry can do to help improve traffic flow.
So I've just driven 3 miles on Harmony, and I haven't hit 1 red light. Yep, it's snowing. And I have to say, every time it snows, I kind of go into this panic attack. Literally, it's trying to get the kids dressed and warm and out to daycare. It's shoveling my driveway, it's shoveling my walk, it's shoveling my steps, trying to get the cars out. I honestly don't even know what to do first. But at least I only have this to worry about. Can you imagine trying to do all of this for the entire city? I mean, think about it. How many miles and miles of streets we have to plow when it snows? I mean, how do you know when the snow's gonna stop? How do you know how much material to put down on the roads? How do you know how icy it's gonna be? Well, first of all, the folks in the city streets department have a plan.
Yeah, Phil, we're gonna have to check our ones again, but they're starting to white up.
The goal is to have all the main streets like Harmony, College, and Prospect clear to the pavement by 4 hours after it stops snowing. And then all the secondary streets, that's streets like Remington and Stewart, clear within 2 hours after that. To do that, they have a fleet of up to 20 snowplows. And it's all controlled out of a command center. And this is really cool. The command center is where the snow crews and the crew chiefs gather to get their assignments and then hit the streets. A large video screen at one end of the room provides a lot of important data on conditions as they happen. There's weather data from several different sources with radar views, predictions, and current temperatures.
We're hooked into the traffic ops department with their cameras, scrolls through different intersections.
And then there are these cool pucks. They're kind of like mini weather stations in the pavement at several places around town. And they can tell the crews a lot of important information.
What the surface temperature is, what the air temperature is, and what the street is doing. If it's dry, if it's wet, if it's icy.
And that information is instantly shared with the drivers in the field as well. So they know exactly what kind of material works best in the current conditions and how much to use and where to go next.
This little gauge here gives us a lot of information on what we need to do as far as when we need to put salt down, when we don't need to.
We also have a map on there that tracks every one of our plow trucks throughout the whole city. We can tell where they're at any time.
I hear people from different towns, when they come into Fort Collins, they always know the streets are going to be done. They can tell exactly when they get to the city, and then that switch makes me feel pretty good that we do that much effort to make them passable for people.
I have to tell you, I'm glad I just have to worry about this, and that's it. So now I'm just focusing on my driveway. Oh wait, hold on real quick. Hello? Yeah, hi Mom. No, I'm doing my own driveway first. Yeah, I know yours is a high priority, but I might have to get the kids, oh, okay. You know what? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Looks like I have to worry about her driveway too. Okay, I know it's my fault and everything, but these things drive me crazy. I mean, what's the deal with 2 hours anyway?
If we use a shorter time limit, then that doesn't give people time enough to do what they need to do. And if we use a longer time limit, then that thwarts our efforts to encourage turnover, because then people won't move their cars often enough. Our mission calls for us to support the economic vitality of downtown, so we need places for customers and visitors to park.
Okay, so we're just doing a parking study here to see how many vehicles use the space per hour.
We have a 48-block area in downtown, and turnover data, frankly, is quite expensive to collect. It's very labor intensive. So we pick a 1-block area.
Come back each hour and see how many vehicles have used that space. A lot of the businesses really appreciate it. With something like that, people are always going to be angry at you for the 2-hour rule, but they also need to understand that we need to rotate people in and out. If we didn't, it'd just be all congested all downtown.
Okay, Armando, I get it now. I'm not mad at you.
Our overall performance goal is 20 passengers an hour for every bus that's out there every hour. We look to them to average 20 passengers. Our current ridership is 27 passengers an hour. That's for every bus that's out there for every hour they're in service.
Of course, that doesn't mean that there's always 27 people. Sometimes there's 50 and sometimes maybe 5. But we make sure each route averages at least 20 riders an hour.
How we tell if a route isn't really meeting its goal, it really goes down to the drivers and the fare boxes, all that data of who's riding which routes, what times of day, which route would be meeting, exceeding, or not meeting up to the goals that we have.
And if we have routes that aren't performing that high, then we discontinue the route. And we take those resources and we put them in other areas where we believe will achieve 20 passengers an hour.
One of the city's key goals is safety. And while transport buses have a great track record, we're always trying to improve.
We're aiming for 0 preventable collisions.
We hold our bus drivers to a very high standard of safety.
With a recent annual analysis, I found that the majority of our collisions were with maneuvering techniques, such as turning corners, low speed. So we put all of our operators through training on the commercial driver's license maneuvers course. Very tight, very technical maneuvering of the bus. And we saw a significant drop in our collision rate for these type of collisions.
With that training, we went from 13 bus accidents one year to 7 the next. That's a big decrease of 46%. We're trying to improve the safety of everyone on Fort Collins streets. Buses, cars, bikes, and pedestrians alike.
We're monitoring accident statistics from year to year to evaluate problems and try to come up with solutions to those problems.
For instance, we're installing traffic beacons that make pedestrian crosswalks safer. We're looking at new ways to integrate bike and car traffic more safely. And we're re-examining traffic lights to see how changes there can make traffic flow not just faster, but safer as well. It used to be when you went through this light at Shields and Elizabeth, you would get stuck at Plum. And that actually caused some problems, and there was a lot of rear-end accidents. Now, they've retimed the light, and so when you make this left turn, you catch the green light at Plum and you can continue on your way north of Shields. And this has resulted in a significant decrease in traffic accidents. From the obvious things, like safe streets and city planning, to the things that you might not think about, like the way your neighborhood looks and feels. Every day you take advantage of city services. And every day, planning, development, and transportation, like the rest of the city, is collecting and analyzing data to make sure that we provide those services in the most efficient and cost-effective way.